Welcome, everybody. I'm Dave O'Connor. I'm Head of Environmental Planning at TU Dublin here. And it's our great pleasure to co-host Walk21 with the Government of Ireland. What a wonderful plenary session, such incredible, impactful speakers, and a wonderful presentation by the local community as well. It was really, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm also thoroughly looking forward to this session on Walk to the Line, joined up thinking in public transport. It's a topic near and dear to my own heart. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker for the day. So we have two of our speakers. We have five excellent speakers. We met last week online together. Five excellent speakers. Two will be joining in remotely. And the first of those is Dr. Tali Hatzakis from the wonderful city of Athens. Hi, Tali. I can see you there. So I think you're going to be beamed to the room now. And just to say that we'll have each talk and we'll have Q&A at the end of each talk, and there may be some questions coming in from online. And there are people viewing online. So when I get a question from the room, I'll repeat it back in so that our online visitors can hear the question. So Dr. Tali Hatzakis is a senior researcher analyst at Trilateral Research Limited. Trilateral provides a range of services for tackling complex social and ethical problems in the public sector. Their artificial intelligence software is supported by research and data and cybersecurity. So welcome, Tali. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I hope you hear me well, and thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to present our research findings. Today, I will be presenting a subset of our survey findings from the TRIPS project. My presentation addresses the issue of encouraging people with disabilities to walk more often, because there are more than 100 million registered disabled citizens in Europe, so not a small cohort. We hope that by understanding and addressing the needs and requirements will significantly reduce inequalities in walking and cycling, but also increase sustainable transport for all. And when I'm saying for all, I don't mean just for disabled citizens. I mean for the elderly. I mean for mothers with prams. I mean for any of us who may face a temporary difficulty due to illness. For example, long COVID symptoms create a lot of barriers in terms of us standing up, or weaknesses, very much common requirements for people who face disabilities. So just very quickly, what is the TRIPS project? It's an EU-funded project that takes a new approach for designing transport systems free from mobility barriers. We are 11 partners, including ENIL, which is the European Network of Independent Living. This disability NGO apart from people with disabilities, promoting independent living for everyone, and UITP, of course, which is the Association of Transport Operators, among others, of course. And we're working in 7 European cities for the past 2.5 years, promoting hands-on solutions. Our approach is new in that we are developing the methodology, but also the collaboration tools and protocols that enable persons with disabilities to take part in the innovation process, all the way from research to ideation, to prioritization, to co-design, even the adoption of solutions in their cities. We have generated a number of tools and recommendations, some of more systemic. Currently, we have developed an app to measure the mobility divide between disabled and non-disabled citizens, and I'm actually pitching for the development or the establishment of a European Accessibility Observatory today in Civitas. Anyway, part of this project, we have obviously done user research on a mobility survey that looked at their views and attitudes of people with disabilities on 9 new and emerging mobility solutions including the cycle lanes and e-scooters and bike sharing schemes. And this is what I am going to be presenting to you today, this subset of findings. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in this post-COVID era, investment strategies for urban mobility look at cycling and walking as a new safe strategy to opening up our cities. But what does that mean for a person with disability? Now, walking and generally navigating the urban infrastructure is a conundrum for them and their primary concern. It's the number one concern by far in our pecking order. Particularly first and last mile issues, reaching your destination reaching your bus stop or a station, and reaching from a station to your final destination, it's always something very uncertain and very stressing for people with disabilities. And not so much coming, from their house to their nearest bus stop because they choose where to live and they choose to live in places that they are accessible. But for example, going from one new destination to another impulsive destination, like, going from your doctor to meeting your friends downtown at a cafe to have a coffee with them, can take days or weeks of planning for them. People on wheelchairs see the possibility of using cycle lanes as alternative to sidewalks, especially when sidewalks are full of hurdles and for whatever reason. So they're piggybacking this infrastructure. They feel unsafe because of their other passers-by, especially fast cyclists. And this is an issue not just for people on wheelchairs, but also, for example, people who have hearing impairment and they cannot hear people coming from the back. So safety is a big issue for using cycle lanes. And it's particularly electric scooters, for example, that are noiseless. It's an issue both for people who can't see very well and people who cannot hear very well, because they don't make the usual noises that they are accustomed to navigate and kind of anticipate people and things around them. So we have to look into this aspect of this new electric mobility solutions. Now there is a desire amongst people with disabilities for greater freedom overall and greater autonomy overall, and they are willing to use any assistive technology, any app, any wearable, anything that can help them gain this freedom and autonomy. So when we're looking at mobility and transport, we need to think of these assistive technologies that can help them navigate existing infrastructure better as a potential solution to solve the mobility and the transport and the traveling aspects, whether it's walking, whether it's cycling. Another thing that we found out that there are not reliable journey planners that encompass like real-time information about the accessibility of their end-to-end journey. How do I get on and off a cycle lane safely? Where is the interchange that I can use? For example, a traffic light that caters for those with visual impairments. But they're not just said what bothers them, they also have ideas. So of course they want cycle lanes to become wider, so fast cyclists cannot bypass at a distance to safeguard them. They want wider cycle lanes because they want tandem bikes and tricycles and alternative modes of cycles that they can use, irrespective of what is their impairment, or even handcraft cycles. They want clear signposting and some sort of signaling to control walking and cycling when you go to mixed traffic, especially cycling more than walking. So traffic signals for cycling and signposting. They want park lanes so they can get on and off the bicycles or cycles safely. And also they want ramps to go in and out of them. And we need to educate other cyclists to look after them and vice versa. So some sort of cycling education. When it comes to bikes and scooters, they have ideas like, renting tricycles and hand cycles and quadricycles, but also like adaptation accessories that they can put on their wheelchairs to turn them into electric wheelchairs so they can go faster on cycle lanes, or rent tandem e-scooters or sitting down e-scooters or electric and self-powered bikes. And this relates to the vehicles themselves, but they're also looking at solutions like voice assistance for the booking software. So if I'm blind, I want a voice assistance for booking renting a bike or a quadricycle. And charging stations to be all over the city so they don't feel that they might get stranded somewhere. So some of the ideas are coming that came up from our research. Next, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So when it comes to recommendations, TRIPS looked at how we can take a systemic approach to address the door-to-door accessibility issues. And for this, we require greater collaboration, not only across urban planning and transport planning, but also social services and education systems to provide the possibly the digital, we're talking about everything being controlled from an app. They need to have smartphones and know how to use them. And this is not the case for most disabled people, some of which cannot afford it. So on the one hand, we propose digital education for disabled citizens to raise their competence and confidence in using smart technologies, whether they are on the vehicles or on personal technologies like smartphones or wearables that can enable them to use the up-and-coming mobility solutions. And on the other hand, we propose greater collaboration between urban and transport planning to design accessible routes, to design accessible city and transport infrastructure, and most fundamentally, to learn how to include people with disabilities in the innovation process, because with the best of wills, we cannot empathize and with them. We need to include them in the process so they can speak for themselves and tell us what they want and how they want it, because in most cases, our assumptions are far out. So next slide, please. Thank you. Thank you for listening. That's all I had to say for today, apart from maybe the fact that we are continuing with the second round of our mobility survey. This time focusing on the elderly, trying to figure out to what extent the elderly and people with disabilities have the same requirements. Thank you. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, we can't hear you while I'm speaking. So I'm going to see if there are any questions from the floor, and then I'll relay them back to you, and we'll have to switch over, to avoid that echo. So really interesting talk from Tali. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, please, in the green and then the blue. Yeah.
So I just noticed on one of Tally's slides reference to an online course about including disabled citizens in planning. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Great, okay, and I'll take your question.
Has Tally any idea how the disability community can get urban planners and engineers and architects to actually listen to us rather than box ticking, which is the current scheme of things?
Great. Okay, Tali. So we have two questions from the floor. The first one is a link to training courses in training for mobility and universal design. And the second question is from, I think, a disability representative. How can we get technical experts, the professions, engineers, planners, architects to listen to us? Is that the, yeah? So two questions.
Yes. Okay, so we are developing, we are developing a MOOC for transport planners and urban planning. Thank you. So we are developing this MOOC for for everyone, but particularly for urban planners and transport planners and public sector staff that want to understand everything that comes out of the TRIPS project, but more importantly, how to do it themselves. So the MOOC is currently in development. It will be taught by university staff, but also by people, persons with disabilities themselves. So, and it will be made available from our website towards, I think we'll be ready in December. So we need a couple of more months to, finalize our content. Whoever is interested, please do send me an email. I can put you in contact and I can share links, of course, with anybody interested. We are also interested to be a hands-on resource. Whoever wants to embark in replicating our methods and tools to be an extra resource to help you, to mentor you, to train you. So please do reach out to us. We are more than willing to help. Now, the second question. Well, it is hard, but also it isn't hard. We're working with UITP, which is the Association of Transport Operators, and this in July, we signed a memorandum of understanding between the European Network of Independent Living, the Association of Transport Operators, and AAATE, which is the Association of Assistive Technologies Suppliers. So these three parties have come together to sign the LECO declaration and reconfirm that to what extent and which lines, if you like, of accessibility will become strategic priority for all three of them, and how they plan to work together. As part of that, or rather as a next step from that, we're developing a set of practical recommendations that stem from the LECO declaration and that will be written into a memorandum of understanding, also to be signed by disability NGOs and by transport operators. So they can become, as I said, strategic initiatives. Today, I am presenting the establishment of a European Accessibility Observatory that measures accessibility based on 6 dimensions that persons with disabilities have come up as important to them throughout the different stages of their journeys. And what I'm proposing is to, have a public observatory for measuring this, because we know what gets measured gets done. We are also proposing the development, and I will be pitching for this very soon, for the development of a European accessibility design center, because what we have realized is that transport operators do not have the internal teams that know how to co-innovate with persons with disabilities. And that makes them shy away from these hands-on initiatives. So we want to establish this design center to provide training, mentoring, resources, know-how, and disabled designers. We want to train disabled people to become designers of accessibility solutions. So, yes, thank you.
in Dublin.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much, Tally. We don't unfortunately have time for any more questions, but thank you for telling us about your important research. And thank you for also suggesting that we could connect with you to find out more about that. And I hope that slides can possibly be distributed. I hope you can stay on for the rest of the session. And apologies for any technological glitches that we're having. We seem to be getting things working at the moment. So thank you very much, Dr. Tally Hatzaki. I'm going to move now to our second speaker who is in the room, Professor Helge Hillenhutter. Welcome, Helge. Helge is Programme Leader for Urban Planning Studies and Board Member of the new Walk21 Europe organisation. He has investigated for more than 10 years in the relationship between public transport, walking and walking environments. Helge, I think you can join us here. We get you up and running. There is a clicker.
Yeah.
We also have an intelligent camera that's picking up movement. So I'm going to try to
that is very nice. Yeah.
see if that works.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. I start very briefly with some things, 1 and 2, that I've presented here quite often, actually, the last years on Walk21 and many different locations. And then I get to number 3, which is a bit more, some details about what is walking actually related to public transport, what is happening on the streets. And first, why is walking important for public transport? I picked out this graphic here. It's a bit complex. All these dots are cities, and the cities that are more in this direction have a higher share of walking. So it's modal split data that we use here. So these cities here have a high share of walking. And then these cities higher up have a high share of public transport, right? So we have cities like Leeds, nearly 40% of all travels go by public transport. And then we have other cities like St. Gallen in Switzerland, where about 40% of all journeys are by walking. And the funny thing is that we see and then we have these colors here. The dark colors is kind of, that shows how much cars are still driving in these cities. And the dark colors is more like, it didn't manage so well. And the funny thing is, this city, even they have high public transport use, they don't manage so well in reducing car driving. And then to conclude very quickly, you see these cities here where they have a high share of walking and a high share of public transport, and they all manage pretty well to reduce car driving. Look here, 60 to 30% car traffic. That is very low for a European standard. And that is all kind of, it's walking and public transport. There's lots of walking and there's lots of public transport. This just gives an impression. It's very rough, of course, looking at these figures, but I can explain a bit more why this is so. Because, I mean, we all know when we take a bus, we first walk, we wait, we take the bus, and then we probably have to walk again. That's very usual. And we can also see how many people walk. Over 90%. Wherever you are, we have investigated 12 very different cities. Usually don't compare apples and pears as a researcher, but we did that anyway. We said, it's so funny, it's everywhere the same. They all walk, basically. And then what we see is when we look at the travel time, from door to door, not just the time that we sit on a bus, nearly half of the time we are pedestrians. It's called a public transport journey, but we walk so much, half of the time we are not on a bus, on a tram or something else. And this is something funny. When asking people who travel by public transport, what do you remember from that journey? Quite open, without anything. They just come up with anything. And then what they talk about, 70% is from the time they are not on a public transport wheels, they are actually pedestrians. That is very much shaping the impression of what we call a public transport journey. And what are the potentials for public transport? We know that in good walking environments, people walk about 70% longer to bus stops. That's quite long. It's quite extensive. It's an old research where they found this, and we have just recently investigated what is doing this effect. And what we find is 4 factors. They are all urban environment. It's all urban planning. That kind of, when we count that together, we are quickly with that 70%. And that's really, it's something that we do in urban planning. It's not no hocus pocus. We don't have to wait if some car company has developed some driving or technology wheels and so on. It's urban planning. This is no hocus pocus. You can just do it. Just do it right. And then when we look what is the effect for public transport actually? Yes, we're actually substantially increasing the catchment area. So we, in principle, theoretically, we triple the amount of people who live in walking distance to public transport. 3 times as much. That is very substantial. We tested that in reality, and we're still getting figures like 80 to 150%. So it's a substantial amount of more people who live in walking distance to public transport. And that is without any investment in vehicles and that stuff. That is good walking environments, right? So this is kind of the first part. And now I'm getting a bit into details that I've very seldomly presented, actually. What we've done, we have done about 450 observations of people walking to and from public transport stop. It was quite a lot of work, to be honest, and it was on the street we were observing and so on. And what we found, we measured step frequencies. Sounds a bit nerdy, but what we see from here is that people that walk to the stop, about 83% we see they are under time pressure. And then we have departing. That's much more relaxed, obviously. There is a very clear difference between walking to the stop and from the stop. Not so surprising, but nobody talks about this. And then, so it's a bit slow. And then we looked on from where do people come, actually. So we have a stop, do they coming from which direction? And we see that there is a pattern. Here, a lot of people coming. That was a bit specific because there was a pedestrian street ending here. That's why that was so strong. But that is also quite strong. And what we see is that people don't like to walk against the driving direction of the bus. That makes sense because the bus takes from here to there. It's about 2 minutes. You save that and you can walk longer. And that's what people do, right? So they rather walk longer than rather sitting on the bus 1 minute longer. So that's obviously interesting. And then when you look at in a kind of different stops in the city, we see that this happens in relationship to the city center. So most people kind of, they live in not in the city center, so they come somewhere from the suburbs, and we have there this pattern actually. So the stop is not located in the center of the catchment area; it is actually moved out a bit in the direction of the city center, and that is very important. It helps us to plan and to understand where do people come from, so we have an idea what is going on. It's very important, but nobody talks about it. I've seen nothing basically on that. That is, and then walking to the stop, an important question is when you have to cross streets, and often you have to cross that street where also the bus is driving on, and buses are not driving usually on side streets, they are traffic streets, there's lots of cars on it. But what we see is from this understanding, from where do people come actually, a lot of coming from here, they cross the street in front of the bus, and when people come from here, that seems to be a bit less problematic. And when they get out of the bus or the tram, this is happening, they cross the street right in front of it when they're walking in this direction, or behind, and all the transport engineers see already cars coming from here, they don't see it. That is dangerous, that is a problem. Right? And then we have measured how much time do they need when you have to cross quite a busy, one of these busy streets. And these 10%, that is the percentage of a 250-meter long walk to a stop that you basically stand and wait. So 10% on average, you stand and wait when you have to cross a street. One street. It can happen you have to cross twice on a junction or something. And then the problem is when you want to catch a bus on the other side of a busy street, you have to double that up. That makes 20%. That is quite substantial. And that goes even higher if you have really kind of like 4-lane road with kind of 1,400 cars per hour or something, that goes up to 30% easily. And that eats up your catchment area. It's getting smaller and smaller, right? So less and less people are living in an acceptable walking distance when we have these big streets and we don't kind of support pedestrians in crossing it. We usually still kind of say, okay, cars must go through. We don't want traffic jams there. Long waiting times. And so we understand street crossing here is a problem, I mentioned it already, and all these people are under time pressure. And they cross in front of the bus, especially when you're late at the stop. And that's a serious problem that we have to remember. And we've observed lots of these cases, and the funny thing is, people start walking, and at the second they can see the bus, even though it's far away from the stop, they start running. Right? It's quite logic, actually, but we don't think about it. But that is something that we can keep in mind when we think of how do you want to provide safe crossing facilities in situations like this. They are very common. We have them everywhere. They're all stops, basically. And that is a stop design that I've not come up with that. It's built in Switzerland, in Zurich, where they have a tram stops, and then they have kind of these traffic eye that is blocking cars here from driving, passing by the stop tram. And then they have the pedestrian crossing right in front of the tram, which is interesting because what happens, what we observe is, even when there are 20 people who get out from the tram, they cross so fast away because here they have the right of way. When the tram wants to start driving again, they're all gone. They're not doing anymore because it's so effective, right? So that works pretty well, even if you think, yeah, that's not logic because they all stop then the tram from starting again. That's not true. They're actually quite fast. It's very effective. It works quite well. And then, yeah, so that was the third important point. But the problem is that this system works only if you don't have heavy loads of cars on that street because they can actually block the street here so strongly that the next bus coming or the next tram can't enter the stop. Well, that's a bit of a problem, but it is at least one solution that we can start thinking of. So we kind of need to be creative to find something here and to understand what can we do. But first, we need to understand the problems. So quickly to conclude, walking is an essential part of most or nearly all public transport journeys, to such an extent that it starts really to annoy me, to have to be honest, that we there's so many different ways to talk about walking related to public transport, like seamless public transport journeys, first and last miles. There are lots of different kind of impression. There's a lot of research out there that does that. They're not pointing to walking, but gosh, I mean, that's what they're doing. They're pedestrians. That's what's happening, but nobody's talking about it. Completely, it's nonsense, basically. The second, good walking environments support use of public transport very significantly. I've shown that. It's a huge effect. And that is kind of a business model for public transport companies. I remember when I presented in Copenhagen such figures, there were these two people from the municipalities who are responsible for public transport sat in the audience, and they asked me, wow, we are building this BRT line, it's expensive, quite complex to kind of implement that in a city street and so on. Should we just leave that and rather invest in walking? Basically, they were serious. And the thing is, they were economists. They were not transport planners or something. They're saying, okay, we see these figures. Doesn't it make sense to really I said, of course, no, we need good buses and all that stuff. But at the same time, we need to invest in walking to kind of support public transport equally. And public transport, walking that is related to public transport has specific features or characteristics that we need to understand, and I try to kind of show some of them here that we need to recognize when we start actually planning. And again, I've said that already, it is planning, it's transport planning, it is urban design, it's lots of things. We can do that. It's not a question of technology or something. We are there already. We just need to be starting being aware of what is actually going on. It is lots of walking. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Helga. We know so little about human needs in the urban environment. This is really fascinating. So does anybody have any questions? I'm going to swap so I can read any questions in. So any questions from the floor for Helga? Yes.
Have to ask. When you're expanding the space for people to walk, again, it's going to be how about the disability community and people with mobility issues who are older, buggies, etc. Because an awful lot of urban planning and transport planning seems to be designed for fit, young, able people, where in Dublin, from experience, it is an older community, a young community with babies and walkers, strollers, and the disabled community use it specifically. So how in relation to that large part of the community will this work?
I think most of the things that I've said are also supportive for everybody who has got difficulties to walk. Because when you cross the street faster, you don't have to stand there so long, and all these things, it's going to be more safe. All these things, that is generally, I think, supporting everybody. Of course, what we should not do, we should not tell public transport companies, oh, now you can increase the distance of stops because people walk long, because then we have exactly that problem. So they want to do that because that's the most effective way of getting bus faster, is just less stops. It is by far the most effective method, but it creates problems. And so we have to kind of be aware of everybody. That is very important. Thank you.
Okay, another question here. Helga, I'm learning as I go. I think it's best if you're near the speaker.
Okay.
Sorry, sorry, gentlemen. And the second
Well,
row.
it's awesome from the International Federation of Pedestrians. It's very good to look at the pedestrians and the relation to the public transport that way. But if you don't change priorities, let's say in the city mobility, it's very difficult. You mentioned that, well, some of the solutions may give more problems for the car drivers. So let's say, what can we do really to change that way of looking at our planning? That's one thing. The other is that I think it's not the distance between stops, tram stops or bus stops, that's the most important. The most important is to have priority in the light signals. There are more and more light signals and more waiting time for the buses in that. So, if you change that, the car drivers will lose time. Well, let them lose it because we are giving other priorities.
Absolutely, you're pointing to a very important direction, and I haven't said that very clearly, but that's in principle the result. When you go into really looking at something, it is prioritizing public transport, but also walking. And we have, I mean, at some point we have to accept these cuts. I've seen the new tram lines here. We talked about it quickly. I have the impression one tries to nicely avoid getting into these streets where the most cars are, but you're then also getting out of these streets where the most people are and the most shops and everything. And that's the problem. And I've seen at least stops that are kind of, it feels middle of somewhere a bit kind of, there are no shops, no things around, long walls and stuff. So that's not comfortable. We have to confront, and we have to take that discussion, of course, at the end. And that is probably the most complex part within this whole complex of questions and topics that we have. It is always ending up with what are we prioritizing? Is it the cars or something else? That is quite right. Yeah.
Time for one more question.
Yeah, thanks. I'll be very careful on important research I'm thinking. It would be interesting to hear your reflections about possible transferability of this type of approach to the global south. One, if you know of any work specifically based on cases from the global south, and any reflections you can have in terms of transferability of this type of thing.
Yeah, good question. I've been working in Africa 20 years ago, so it's a bit time. What I remember from there, that was in Tanzania, in Dar es Salaam, public transport works quite differently at that time in Dar es Salaam. So
they have the BRT.
Yeah, no, it depends. It could be that changed, and that is certainly different from many cities. I would say I can't really properly answer that question because, and I think it depends on the situation. I would assume that African cities can be very different in terms of how is the how our urban space is organized or not organized, how they are kind of put together and so on. There are certainly a lot of that have pretty much adapted the probably an European or an American approach in urban planning, and they've built public transport systems in that. But there are a lot of cities and a lot of places in such cities that look completely different, I think, and that poses quite different questions, I would think. Very interesting question for research.
Okay. Thank you very much, Helga.
Thank you very much.
Once again. Right, okay. I forgot to mention that Helga comes from the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. Sorry for neglecting to mention that at the start, Helga. We have another speaker online, but I'm not sure if
they haven't joined.
I don't see them there, so I'm going to proceed to our next speakers, and maybe Maria will come in towards the end. So our next speaker is Martin Wedderburn. Martin is a transport planner with 20 years experience in transport policy, research, modelling and analysis, and economic appraisal, with an emphasis on sustainable and active travel. He is the founder of Wedderburn Transport Planning, a consultancy specialising in sustainable transport planning and pedestrian movement analysis. Martin is a research associate of Walk21, a former board member of the Transport Planning Society, and a member of the Urban Land Institute Sustainable Development Council. So, welcome, Martin.
Thank you very much. The work I'm presenting today was done on behalf of Midlands Connect. I need to show who they are. So, in the United Kingdom, regional planning is sort of a dirty word. I don't say it, but we have these things called subnational transport bodies that sort of do something like regional planning. I don't know very much power, but they do fund quite a lot of research and develop tools that can be used by local authorities and so on. So Midlands Connect is a subnational transport body. And they funded this work. Just a bit of background. Many of you may be familiar with the World Health Organization HEAT tool, which is used to put monetary value on physical activity benefits of walking and cycling for transport. In the UK, we always do things slightly differently. So we have something called the Active Mode Appraisal Toolkit, which is basically very similar and based on the same research as the HEAT tool. A few differences. If I show you structure of it, it has, from our national travel survey, things about gender and age split, and mean transport, mean distances and speed of walking and cycling trips, which means that we can apply it in a way to people of all ages and age cohorts and so on, to nationally specific data. That's the main difference. It uses a methodology where time spent walking and cycling is converted to metabolically equivalent time units, and looks at the relative mortality risk and the reduction thereof from walking and cycling, and then uses the statistical value of life to convert that to monetary value. So, the issue with this is that it is only used for walking trips from A to B. And as we know, many cities, London, a large amount of the walking done is actually for public transport schemes. The simple question was, can we come up with a tool that does the same thing for walking trip stages of public transport, so we can include it in the public transport investment model? We did it based on UK data, but the same could be applied to any country or city in the world that uses the HEAT tool or anything similar to the HEAT tool. That's basically the question. So I hope what we say now about the UK could be applied elsewhere. So, National Travel Survey. There was an existing study by Patterson and so on that had looked previously at this already in 2010-14, and they excluded about 1/3 of trips exclusively used car or taxi at both ends. No trips. To exclude those, the remaining trips, public transport users accumulate 20.5 minutes of physical activity, which means about 34% meet their 30-minute physical activity target purely from the access and egress to public transport. Now, in the UK, there was a bit of a switch in the way we recorded short walking trips, and that occurred around 2015. So we went back to the data to look at the time span 2016 to 19 with better recording of walking. And it's now 25.5 minutes and 36% for public transport users. So it's a significant contribution to people's physical activity. And here from National Health, sorry, it's a bit small, but I wanted to show it all. We look at the access and egress mode shares of those trip stages, split between London, the large urban areas, small to medium-sized urban areas, and rural. We see we split the home and the destination trip. So at the home end, people walk a bit less. Some of those trips a bit further. Destination end, walking is always a dominant mode. A lot of trips are radial. We see in London, all public transport modes, walking is very, very dominant. As you get more rural, then car and so on become more significant. Taxis become more significant at the destination end. Cycling to public transport in the UK is very, very niche, let's say, compared to many other European countries. It's slightly only actually features in small to medium cities, actually, which is just small number of cities, actually Oxford, Cambridge, and a few commuter towns around London, really. So that's gives you an impression of where that walking takes place. We also looked at catchment distances. There's a lot of international literature on this, and there's no surprises in the National Travel Survey. It pretty much mirrors what we see around the world. So at the home end, we're getting walking to bus between 400 and 600. It goes up maybe to about a kilometre for rail trips, and it's slightly shorter at the destination end. It's worth mentioning that London has an integrated public transport network with actual targets for how near stops should be to people's place of residence and so on. The rest of the UK has deregulated bus networks, so that where stops are is purely a choice of where the operators choose to operate. We looked at public transport access then in terms of the way we model public transport and the way we appraise it. There are several ways that public transport is modeled. We looked at whether the access mode is actually predicted as part of that. So the elasticity approach is often used when we're modelling changes to public transport frequencies and so on, or costs. It typically looks at station end-to-end origin destinations and ignores the access mode. That doesn't help us much. We sometimes use trip rates, which are typically defined by the access mode and the catchment around the station. And therefore, we do implicitly look at access modes there. Sometimes we use gravity models, which generally have a very, very coarse representation of access to a stop. But they have also been used to model specifically station choice. Mode choice models look at the different characteristics of trips and why we choose one mode or another. Again, generally a very coarse representation of the access modes, although we can specifically model access to a station using the two. Four-stage models, which form the main, let's say, strategic models of most cities, tend to have a very, very coarse zone structure and zone connectors, which are very, very bad at predicting access mode to stations. And in the Midlands Connect context, there is now a station choice model, which actually models access to stations, but actually does it for the purpose of improving the public transport assignment. And actually, it's very bad at predicting how people access those stations. So the conclusion is that in most cases, we're not going to get, when we're looking at public transport schemes, we won't have the information on the access modes from the modelling we do for that improvement. What we tend to fall back on are diversion factors, which are factors which say, for a given improvement, we expect X% of people to come from this other mode or from no travel, i.e. generated travel. So this tool then falls back on diversion factors. So for a metropolitan rail scheme in a city with no light rail, we'd expect 1/3 to come from bus, 1/3 from car, small portion from light rail, cycle, walk, taxi, and generated travel. And that's the way we would apply it. The toolkit itself essentially builds on, very deliberately builds on the back end of the AMAT tool. The idea being that when one is updated, this will simply be a front end that can be switched across and updated at the same time. So we have an increase in the intervention mode trips. We use the diversion factors then to calculate the change in main mode trips. We have an area type that will tell us something about the access modes, and that will give us a change in access mode trip stages. And we then use that to convert into the change in time spent walking and cycling. And that could be replicated for the people who use the heat tool or any other appraisal tool in the same way. And just some case studies. We looked at 3 different schemes at different stages and how to be applied. So Evesham to Stratford is a gap in the public transport network. There's a rail network at Stratford here, a relatively big Evesham, and there's nothing in between. And this was identified by Midlands Connect. They looked at mobile data where were there lots of trips happening that could be plugged as gaps. Simple question, if you put in a coach service and you generate a 10% mode share, what happened? We looked at mainly here diversion from car and new trips. You get relatively high benefits, 60 million benefits over 60 years in terms of pure physical activity benefits. Another case study, quite a well advanced scheme, tram scheme. We had full modelling had been done, 5 million passengers per annum, etc. But actually a relatively small benefit in terms of physical activity. A lot of people were shifting from rail to light rail to have slightly shorter walk distances. So it does also include people walking less. And a rail scheme case study that had an interurban rail scheme fact that had a relatively small number of new users, but a relatively high physical activity increase for those who do shift mode. So what the work we did included literature review, the actual user guide, and the spreadsheet appraisal tool, which is built very similar to the existing AMAP tool in the UK. And that's the project team. That's just a quick overview, and I hope that will inspire people maybe who use similar appraisal tools in other countries and cities to think about how to include public transport.
Martin, thanks for sharing this best practice and methodology with us. I'm going to see if there are any questions. We do have some people online, so if you can stay nearest the podium so people can hear online. So any questions for Martin? What? Yeah, hello.
Yeah, I'm on again. Yes, but I'm not seen really, let's say, from the pedestrian point of view, or from a next transport, public transport provider. What can we do really to shorten the time? How much time does the pedestrian use? Could we change things in the access for the pedestrian to public transport? How much will that influence the whole scheme? The modals, they're very good. I've used them many years, but it's very, very difficult to come into the pedestrian time that really may be changed. You may lose some time for the drivers if you change things that get better things for pedestrians. Where are we in this, let's say, relationship?
Well, I think Helga's addressed some of the things we could do for the pedestrians in terms of the shorter the way we can appraise that. I mean, this is just one bit of the toolkit for making the case for a public transport and pedestrian combined scheme. So this is just one little bit additional in that toolkit. One thing I would say, actually, related to that in the UK, a particular problem around rail. We always go for single gate line access stations. I mean, this is 2022, we all have digital phones and we know where every single rail passenger is, and they insist that we have to have a paper ticket and go through a gate line. It is absurd. And we cut out about 30 or 30% or half of PT catchment by having a single gate line access. So in terms of, there are very, very low hanging fruit in the UK in terms of better public transport access schemes, getting people through stations. And the same goes for, you showed the Zurich example, I would show that the way we design access to bus stops is the point. Often you're putting detours for no reason, just reducing your PT catchments. So there's very low hanging fruit in what we can do. And I think we do have some of the tools to actually make business cases for this now.
Right, okay. It was very noticeable that the bus users get to walk less. So, is there an equity issue in that? Is it, disadvantaged users accessing poorer services get to walk less? Is that is the rail service offering something better?
People are willing to walk further for a faster service. We know that. What's maybe shocking in the UK context is that actually differential between London and the rest of the UK. Actually walking 650 metres to the bus stop is internationally not necessarily the norm, and it probably says something about how bad our bus stop is in many cities, especially small towns.
I just have commented and supporting that. That was a really nice presentation and a very important one, actually, because understanding that these models do not very well reflect what we're discussing here is, and then take it further, these models are probably based on lots of decision making during the last 3 decades or something. And first now, where we have kind of GIS data that really very detailed can show triplex and something, and sometimes we have travel surveys that go into that details. But then when we compare actually behavior with that models, then we see they work well for public transport and how people kind of navigate through public transport system, but not how they get to them. We've just recently investigated similar research, and it was exactly the same conclusion.
And they always, but if you actually read the models, they always say they are designed to navigate against the main peak flows into the city. If you look at a single station, even then you have to be very, very careful with the
So really interesting. I had a question about the diversion factors. Actually, are they from a UK-based study? Could they be universal? Are they transferable? Or do people need to calculate those wherever you are?
They are from a literature review that looked at both UK and international studies of developed countries that were deemed to be similar enough to the UK to inform.
Right. Okay, Martin, thank you very much. We have to move on to our final speaker, I think. So thank you very much, Martin. Okay, and I think we have our final speaker now, which brings us back a little bit on time. We had a later start. We lost a little bit of time from technology, but I think we're making that up now. So, Jim, we'll get people to lunch reasonably on time.
I'm not the. I was just trying to get in touch with Maria to just be able to speak as well.
Okay, yeah, well, fine, yeah.
We're doing what we can.
What we can do is we could do a movement break, and then if we could bring Maria in, that might work. So. Great. Well, our final speaker that's here with us in the room is Win Bui. And Win is the Monitoring and Evaluation Assistant at NGO AIP Foundation from Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. And the AIP Foundation are dedicated to preventing road injuries and fatalities in Asia and beyond. In a role, Win provides oversight and coordination for all the M&E activities related to the organization's road safety programs, with a transparent methodology that supports the efficient implementation and achievement of goals. Welcome, Win.
Thank you, everybody. So, good morning, everyone, and hello again. My name is Win, and I'm the Monitoring and Evaluation Coordinator of AIP Foundation, which is a non-profit organization dedicated to saving life and road safety in low and middle income countries. And today, I would like to introduce you to a new evidence-based approach that we are applying in one of our projects. Yeah, just a little bit information background. So According to the World Health Organization, road crash are the leading killer for children and youth aged from 5 to 29 worldwide. And in our country, in Vietnam, they cause the death of around 2,300 children per year. On the other hand, the safer approach system, which is endorsed by WHO, the safer road is considered as one of the five main components that will lessen the injury and fatality due to road crash. And facing that contest, our organization, working with the International Road Assessment Program, IRAP, and entity together, we are implementing a project called AI Empowering Youth for Safer Road, with the support from the Fortnite Foundation and the FAA Foundation. So this project, in this project, we apply evidence-based approach in which we utilize emerging technology. And today I would like to show you how we apply this project in order to support the decision maker to identify the high-risk location, and then we'll thereby have for allocating resource to improve the road modification, as well as to engage you across 3 pilot cities of our project, including Ho Chi Minh City, Pleiku City, and Imai City. So in this approach, we're gonna incorporate 3 innovative features. The first one is the big data screening methodology. The second one is the youth engagement app, which is a mobile device, a mobile app. And then finally is the star rating for school. So first, I would like to talk about the big data screening methodology. So this methodology is organized in 4 analytical levels of analysis and refinement, and which each level it will contain different, which it will analyzing data based on different attributes, and this attribute was actually the potential risk that could affect the safety of the pedestrian, and this attribute will also have to rank the school from the highest rank to the lowest rank. The school with the higher ranking will then be selected and evaluated in the next stage of the analysis, while the school with a lower ranking will be systematically eliminated from the finalists at each level. So for the first level, in the whole project, there are a total of 1,063 schools involved in the big data screening methodology at 3 cities. And for the level 1, which is called the target community, we will focus on identifying the high risk area that will cause the risk to the safety of the pedestrian, which is such as the district or the walk, but not directly associated with the school yet. And in this level 1, because the model we concerned that the smaller battery might somehow reduce the number of schools more than we expected. So therefore, we decided that the level 1 would be more suited to apply in a metropolis such as Ho Chi Minh City or the capital like Hanoi City. And we also skip this level for smaller cities like Imai and Pleiku. And we managed to filter at least 125 schools from 980 schools in Ho Chi Minh City at this level. Coming to level 2 and 3, we'll be looking at the school characteristics and build environment risk, as well as the pedestrian exposure risk. And at this level 2 and 3, because we're concerned that at each level, the number of schools might be significantly reduced due to the context of the Vietnam, context of our country. So that's why we decided to merge both level 2 and 3 together for the data analysis. And in Ho Chi Minh City, we managed to filter at least 56 schools from 125 schools to enter the level 4. And in Pleiku City, we select 25 schools from 56 schools. And for Imai, because this city is a bit small and there's only 27 schools on the whole city. So we tend to prioritize them rather than eliminate them. And we finalize with 25 schools at the end. And considering the project scope and the timeline, we finalize the list of 106 schools to enter into the level 4, which is the starting for school. And the 106 schools will be undergoing detailed infrastructure assessment, which is conducted by the starting for school that I will mention later in my presentation. And besides, this school will become the candidate for the youth engagement app that would be pilot right after the big data pilot. And so while we piloting the big data method in Vietnam, we learn some key learning. So the first one is that because we face a lot of challenge due to some data being unavailable and hard to collect. But however, to overcome this challenge, we learn and also by working slowly with the government, we allow to obtain and access with lots of valuable data, and we use them as a substitute and process for the other attributes such as the pedestrian capacity. We will replace with the overall capacity, and income will be for unemployment rate to rank the school from the higher rank to lower rank. For the second feature that we are included in our project is the youth engagement app. So beside in addition to the big data methodology, we consider the voice of the youth and the children and the community is very important nowadays. So on that basis, we have developed an initial basis develop an app which is called Youth Engagement App. And in this app, this will allow the user to map the location where they feel safe or unsafe when they travel to school, not only by walking, but also by on motorbike, by cycling, or even on public transportation. And while using this app, the student, they be able to, take and upload the photo of the location that they feel safe or unsafe to the system, and they will show the descriptive option that map with the traffic situation, and also to provide the detail related to the infrastructure and also the traffic situation. And during the ideation stage of the app, we had conducted in-depth interview with 28 community members, and most of them are the students and also the youth. And because we want to learn about their perspective about the feasibility of the app, is this one possible, is it friendly, and what kind of feature that they want to include in this app. And most of the participants engaged in the interview express their support for the app and think that this concept and the idea for this application is very encouraging, and they think that it's crucial to empower the youth to share their opinion and engage more attention and voice on road safety issue. So thanks to their diverse feedback, we were able to complete the first draft of the youth engagement app, and this will have shaped the basic feature, the content, and the interface of the app as you see on the screen. And this feature so far, with the current app, we're gonna do the user-friendly testing on a small group of 63 students across 3 pilot cities to see what is their reaction, what is their response, and to evaluate the overall performance of the app to see if it's really feasibility and friendly to them. And then we will do after that we'll do a quick fix adjustment to the app to ensure that there's no technological error happen. And then on in the official pilot of the app, we expect to involve at least 1,800 students from 18 schools and also 7,200 community members, which are the parents, the student, the teacher, and even the local community who live surrounding the school that we're going to pilot. And during the piloting of the app, yes, thank you. So during the year piloting of the app, we expect that the student will implement a lot of activity, including the app training, the communication, and the evaluation to ensure, in order to raise the people awareness about the road safety issue, and also to make sure that we can check the change in the student awareness, knowledge, and attitude behavior as well. Oh, so all the area during the pilot process that have the black spot reported, that have more black spot that is reported by the student, will be subjected to a detailed infrastructure assessment, which will be conducted by the starting for school. And moreover, we believe that the youth engagement app can be a very inspirational app tool that will empower the student to raise their voice to local authority as well. For the starting for school. So the starting for school will allow us to access all the platforms that is reported by the youth engagement app, as well to access all the school that is filtered from the big data screening methodology. And the starting for school is an evidence-based approach, which is developed by the IRAP International Role Assessment in order to measure, monitor, and communicate the risk around the school zone. And this tool will generate the starting as well as the risk score, where 1 star in the least safe and 5 star in the safest. And the school with the lowest star rating will be chosen for our project to improve the infrastructure around the school zone. And in our project, what we want is not only to apply the starting for school to assess the infrastructure around the school zone, but we also want to empower the youth, especially the students. So that's why we want in our project we're gonna recruit at least 8 volunteers to help us collect and do the data collection around the school zone. And through the capacity building session, we expect that these volunteers will be able to equip themselves with knowledge about the tool, how they can and they can even use the tool to raise their voice and share their concern with the local authority and increase the public awareness. And the big data result along with the youth feedback that we gathered so far will be uploaded on the citizen portal. And the citizen portal is actually a web-based tool embedded on the provincial government website that will allow the citizen to access about the existing high-risk area on the road, and as well as the road section that's already evaluated and update internal infrastructure. And this citizen portal will also assist the government agency at all levels to consult, evaluate, and even leverage it in order to secure national and city funds for the road upgrade. This citizen portal will facilitate communication between the decision maker, the local government, with the community, dispatching toward a safer and healthier environment for children to grow. So we can say that by combining and applying technology, it's not only a trend, but also an urgent need to addressing convoluted issues like road safety. And in our project, by the combination of big data, youth engagement app, and starting for school, these 3 will allow us to, it's a brand new approach ever pilot in such low and middle income country like Vietnam, but we believe that it will harness us to various big data sources from big data, and while ensuring the credibility, the reliability, with the evidence-based result to help decision makers to identify the high-risk location around the school zone for resource allocation, and also to engage youth as well. With 86% of survey stakeholders agreeing that this approach is really helpful to help them improve the community safety, our project has proved that this approach is really potential and have its advantage as well. And secondly, we believe that because our project focus on the human-centered orientation, so we ensure that during the whole process of the youth engagement, from the develop, ideation, and piloting, we want to gather the participation of the youth to make sure that the youth is more friendly and more easier to use for them as much as possible. And from then we will promote the greater engagement and try them to be a road safety ambassador to influence the authority. So in conclusion, So in conclusion, I just want to emphasize one more time that the interrelation between the technology and the community engagement must go hand in hand and complement each other to improve the safety of not only the community but also to inspire the youth and empower them in the future of road safety. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Wynne. Congratulations on a very large scale project. Hopefully it will be very, very successful. Are there any questions for Wynne?
There was an earlier presentation in Plenary about the Irish version of making routes to school safe. And the lead said at the time that parents liked the changes and didn't mention the community, the local people didn't. Do you find the same thing happens with these projects, that school or the community like the changes? Or do you think because the children want the changes, the community is more accepting of the changes?
So when we first built this project, we realized that the youth are the pioneer, the technology for BioD, and they are much 10 times high tech than the local authority nowadays. Why? But somehow the current context of the system on the road safety in our country is not really well developed and not really well structured so far. So why the youth is really the pioneer and really the one who will lead the future generation. So that's why we want to engage them in our project, and that's why we want to involve them in our project, including the youth engagement app development. And we believe that when we have the assistance of the youth in our project, they can somehow affect the authority. And when the authority know about the voice and the concerns that the youth is raising right now, they will care more about them, and they will somehow have some repercussion on the action and take some action for what is happening, what is the concern of the road safety on their country right now.
Great. Any other questions?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, do the local authority have another priority area for this after the road safety?
Sorry, can you raise your voice?
Do the local authority have another priority area to apply the youth engagement app after they've looked?
So could it look at something other than road safety after?
Yeah, so because the app is still in the middle of the testing right now, so we only treat the three target city, which I mentioned is the Ho Chi Minh City, Pleiku, and Yên and we will first start piloting for the youth engagement app at the three cities first to see what is the reaction of the community and the youth, and if we have received, and if based on the feedback that they will give them, we will use them and try to think about how to scale up the youth engagement app nationwide after that.
Okay. Time for a final question. Good question. So, what's the timeline for your program, Wynne? When do you expect to see results, or is it a number of years that you think that this will need to be rolled out for?
Yeah, so actually next month we will start user-friendly testing, and at the end of this year we're gonna do the official pilot of the app at the three pilot city, and we expect to receive the feedback by conducting the focus group discussion and interview with not only the student but also to the parent and the teacher by early next year, and maybe based on the adjustment and also the feedback, the app might be have around the middle of next year, I think.
Great. Okay, very exciting. Well, you've seen earlier there is a Safer Routes to School team here in the National Transport Authority, so maybe there's potential learnings from each other. So
Actually, in that the DFI have something like that. The Israeli Federation of Ireland have a similar program for mobile phones for Make by Day, which is in this month, and it's very similar to what you're doing. It's pedestrian access on footpaths rather than schools, but it's the same concept of mapping the bad spaces and the dangerous spaces. So I fully understand it works. great success last year with showing child clients and data clients on paving. So you will have great success. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much, Wynne. Okay, so I'm just going to check with Jim. So we did intend to have another person online, but I don't think Maria's connected, unless you've.
She's been trying to connect for about half an hour, and I'm not sure. Do we get?
It's not on my end, Sarah.
Okay. So if you bear with me, I'll just give you a 10-minute just quick overview about her project and what she's doing, because she's really keen that you hear about it. You'll still have an hour for lunch, so please just hold on here. The particular thing about this project, and Maria works for AMB, which Ollie will translate for me, but it's the transport provider in Barcelona. What does AMB stand for? You can think about it.
Yeah.
Okay, I was hoping your Spanish would help. But okay. It's the Metropolitan of Barcelona Association, or something?
Area Metropolitana de Barcelona. That's
Okay,
a metropolitan area. And they have special, let's say, committees for transport and for public transport.
Exactly.
And all that.
Okay. Is she going to be here now, or no? Okay. So Maria works there, and basically a number of women who work inside the Transport Authority were concerned that their voices weren't being heard in the way that the organisation worked, as much as how the service was being provided. And they wanted to get together and feel how they could improve, engage with women, particularly in Barcelona, identify where there might be a gap in the way that the service was currently running, and to see how they might be able to help empower more women to be involved in the way that the service was being delivered. It was a really excellent project, and it's still going on. It won't be completed until December. And we were a very small partner in this to just try and support with the sort of outreach, because they hadn't done this before. To actually, they wanted to create an evidence base. They wanted to reach out to women, particularly across Barcelona, of course, and say, why is it that you do or don't use the bus? And what are the, where should we be making investments in order, and what should those investments be in order to make sure our service is tailored specifically to include your needs? And we did some research, and this research is on the Walk21 website. It's we've actually got a project. It's called Inclusify, this project. It was all about including people. And this this piece of research about what evidence exists at the moment. We did a literature search. We looked at existing funded projects where women have been included. But what we wanted to really see is where investments have been made, have women felt more included? You know, where is there evidence of a solution having an impact? You know, there's lots of ideas about what could be done, but is there evidence? And actually, we found a great piece of research, and I'm afraid because I wasn't planning to speak, I won't have all these links now. But we found a great piece of research where somebody had looked back to 1979 all the way through to 2022, and seen where there was evidence of what would help, where there was evidence of women being more included in design and delivery of services. What this has come down to is recognizing that there's actually three areas. We're trying to systemize an approach. There's three areas of the trip where women felt the need for influence. One of those inevitably was the walk to or from the bus stop itself. The second was the bus stop environment. And the third was the bus service. Now, AMB was coming at this because they run the bus service. If the bus seating isn't in the right configuration, or if the driver isn't pulling up and stopping sufficiently at the right place on the curb in order to actually be able to get on and off the bus comfortably, and if the service isn't providing the sort of other things that came up were being able to have a request stop at night, so that you aren't necessarily stopping at the stop as standard, but actually you could say, could you just drop me here, maybe a bit nearer to your door? These were the sorts of things that they felt they could influence. Unfortunately, or fortunately, this is what happens with research and with projects. Women actually said that they also wanted the bus stops to be designed quite differently. And that wasn't particularly under their responsibility. one of the things that women were reporting was quite often you'll see advertising on bus stops. Advertising, it's a revenue stream, and we understand that that's an important part of providing a service, but it's also providing a barrier, a visual barrier, for women to be able to see through and understand who is at the stop or what's going on. And that created some challenges because it's a different department. And it's creating a new conversation with people in ways that they hadn't particularly predicted. And obviously, this whole relationship about accessibility included steps, toilets provision, barriers. There's a great deal of details in order to get right. And I think I won't give you justice. I think what Maria will be very upset that she hasn't managed to be able to present this herself, because she was, the driving force of this and very passionate about it. So let me say that we'll definitely have her presentation online. You'll definitely be able to get a chance to see that. We'll try and record her actually so that you can see it and see the detail for yourselves. But I think one of the interesting things was really that walkability to the stop was also a significant factor. But it means that they've got to have a new relationship with the police and a relationship with the city that says, how can we be involved in that catchment? Because it's not actually a traditional part of the way that we provide our service. We're the fleet. We aren't necessarily the stop, and we're certainly not the getting on and off. And so I think this has stimulated quite an interesting conversation. It was a project, and it is a project, where they're going to have an app, and this app will come out quite soon. And because the way that the ticketing works in Barcelona means that there's already, I think, 200,000 people use the app in order to get their tickets, means that we've got a captive group where we can communicate with them and invite them to actually have more opinions. The nervousness is what they might say. And I think this is a challenge for all of us, is that what is that contract that we can actually develop, where we can say that if you tell us something where you're not happy, what is it that you can expect in terms of a response? And this is a negotiation. It's something that will take time to work out. But I'm really impressed by the fact that Barcelona AMB are particularly interested in this and wanting to reach out into a community, particularly with women, to see if they will be willing to share their experiences so that they have an opportunity to actually improve it. And I think probably one learning that we found already, apart from the lack of, or the diversity of things that are already coming back, is, two things. One, I don't think that you can say that my city is now good for women, and all women want the same thing. We know that already. We know that from Montreal and lots of other places, because, funnily enough, women are as diverse in their ages and abilities and lots of factors that are also influential on decision making. And secondly, I think that when they've done outreach work to engage citizens, they found a hesitancy in women, that they didn't particularly feel that they had a right, maybe, or that they're not used to being engaged or included in decision making. And so they've actually had to work very hard to actually get people to come to meetings, to actually go out and find them and get their opinions. And I think that is a challenge. It's a challenge in the science about how to actually put a methodology together, because it looked good on paper about how we were going to run this project, but in practice, it's proved really quite difficult. It's not to say it shouldn't be done, and in fact, maybe it's more of a reason why we need to do more. But I think we've looked at how many women are being particularly harassed. If you look at harassment, there's good harassment data across lots of countries, particularly in Europe. And you'll find that actually the women in Barcelona are being some of the least harassed. And yet even there, AMB has said there's enough harassment that it deserves a project. We know in some parts of Europe or in other parts, like in Egypt, for example, 98% of women have been harassed on public transport in public space. 98%. Now, they're not doing an app. They're not asking that conversation yet. So we felt and we hope that this work, this is lovely, Maria, and I'm really sorry that I'm stealing her opportunities to speak directly with you. I think that I think women are trying to empower other women, They really believe in this, and they're trying to do it from the inside. And I think this is a really interesting message, that they are finding mechanisms to do it. And it might be an app, but I think if you only saw the app, you'd miss the drive that's behind this, which is actually saying, we know something's not quite right, and we know that we have to come up with a new way of communicating, and maybe this will be it. But I suspect it will be a part of a step towards a more gender inclusive transport service in Barcelona. If she gets, I don't know. Now you're going to see all of that, and she might contradict me, but that's the project, and we'll certainly promote it, and we'll try and get this presentation to you as well.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
I was going to ask Jim if you wanted to take questions on this. Can I actually propose, well, you're the other time asked, you want a short break if you need to.
How many slides does she say there? 16. It's up to you. I mean,
okay. Yeah, can you hear us okay, Maria?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly. Hi, everybody. I'm ready if you want.
Either Maria can talk or we can talk. So at the moment Maria's mic is on, she can't hear us.
Yeah, so do you hear me well?
Okay, Maria, I think you can hear me now.
Yeah, with a reverberation a little bit, but okay. So I don't hear you now because you are mute.
Caldrà fer-les in situ un cop s'hagi fet la instal·lació amb cada una de les càmeres? Bueno, l'EC diu que s'ha de fer totes les càmeres una vegada instal·lades. Per tant, us he dit d'acord amb el que diu.
Okay, just very quickly. Firstly, huge apologies for the technological issues, and we had some at the start as well. So we're okay for time, Jim assures us. Jim has even given us, he was so determined that we'd get to hear your presentation. He's given us a little synopsis. So, but now we'd like to hear from yourself, and we're grateful. And nobody's moved from the room. So
okay.
I think we have normal time, whatever, 10 minutes. If you can give your presentation. And then
okay. I could hear the...
I'm going to turn off my mic now, which means that you can start speaking. Is that okay?
Okay, thank you. I could hear the presentation, Jim. Thank you so much. And sorry for this inconvenience. I will be brief because you explained the idea of the project and the powerful of it. So I'm going to share. I hope you see and hear perfectly now. So, well, Inclusify is called Women Empowerment for Inclusive Mobility. And the idea is to engage as much women as possible to share their challenges and concerns with the transport system. We want to create this innovative tool to map and analyze all information received from these women. And by the way, the tool is already created and is launched in our mobility app, in the AMB mobility app. And we want to ensure public transport services are equitable and inclusive for women. And we want to co-create with women to find solutions to co-design with the administration and public transport operators, or in some cases also with city councils of different municipalities, and to design a methodology and the tool itself that will be scalable and replicable internationally, wherever women are using active and public transport services. What we want is to improve safety, equity, and sustainability. This project is co-financed by EIT Urban Mobility for this year long, and then we will continue in different ways. And this project is possible because we are a consortium formed by AMB, which is the Metropolitan Area of Barcelona, also another company, public entity that is for technological services, that is from AMB also, Walk21 Foundation. Also, We Solve and Social Tech Projects, which is the enterprise that could do the app, the technological part of this project, and also the university, a research institute of the University of Catalonia. So we've done a state-of-the-art process with focus group with women to identify the concerns perceived and problems that they are experimenting in public transport and by accessing to public transport. And we worked the dimensions of safety, accessibility, convenience, and social and physical environment, and basically these three and other concerns that appear in this focus group. Also, Walk21 Foundation had a deep analysis of the state of the art related to this concept of engaging women or citizens by technological applications or by technology in general to improve public transport and equity and safety. And then we wanted to cross these dimensions with the location where these concerns are happening, the walked connection to public transport inside in the bus stop or inside the bus. So by the conclusions of this work at the state of the art and focus group was that more of the concerns are related to accessibility and safety. It's true that depending on the age of women participating in this focus group, the concerns are a bit different, but the conclusion is this, that accessibility and safety are the most highlight concerns. So, as I said before, we have this Metropolitan Mobility app, which have information about all mobility services and public transport crossing the metropolitan area of Barcelona. We have more than 150,000 monthly active users, so it's a very active app. And the main functionality is route planning or checking if the waiting time of the bus in different stops. But we wanted to create a specific space inside this app, which is a community for all citizens that are traveling around metropolitan area in order to help us improve all mobility services and public transport. Inclusify becomes amb vosaltres community, which is amb vosaltres means in English with you. And that's how we call this project here in Barcelona. But of course, the Inclusify project could be scalable could be scaled to other regions or territories, and we can name the project as people feels more belonging to the community. So here, once we click in this menu in amb vosaltres, we enter to this web app where people is invited to do different things. What we can do here, we have 3 participation tools. The first one is share your experience, where we want women share with different women or only with public administration their experience, good or bad, doesn't matter, but to highlight their needs or their concerns by traveling by bus or active mobility accessing to public transport services. So this is how it looks when you click in the first option of participation tools. Here you can choose to hide your name or not, and there are different categories like safety, accessibility, comfort, and some others. Where it happened, on the way or in the bus stop or inside the bus. How was the severity of this experience? And the experience itself. Here, people have space to write the experience. Then you can share a picture, share the location, and so on, and submit. So the idea is to collect all this data and to act consequently But if people want, they can share the experience with other people in the community, and they can respond each other to make the experience more collective. Then we have other participation tool inside this community, which is propose ideas. Here, the public transport authority, in this case, the Barcelona metropolitan area, just post a challenge or a project that we are working on and that we want to get feedback from women. And the idea is that we propose this idea and we launch a question. No, we say, for example, where would you like to include stops on demand for night bus services? Okay, then people click here on propose your idea, and they can propose some ideas to improve this project that we are working on. And the last participation tool is this one, is participate in surveys. Here, when we click here, what we see is this. The first survey will be launched next week and will be related to the experience, the women experience in bus services in the metropolitan area, and also the usage of technology by these women for mobility reasons, of course. So these look like this. We also have another section more related with news about actions or projects that we are working on gender perspective. And well, I put here the registration phases just to show that when you are a member of the mobility app, you automatically go inside the community. But we want to collect some data just to have more statistical data and relate this data with the results, which is related to age, gender, and if they have any specific difficulty on mobility. And then this tool, which is provided, as I said before, by social tech projects, has also a panel, a back office to manage all data collected on these different participation tools. That is really useful for the public administration to manage all this information. This app was, this community in the app was launched at the beginning of August, but without any communication campaign. This communication campaign will start next week by Twitter, Facebook, and the website. And we hope that with this communication campaign, we will have more interactions in the app, and probably in the next edition of Walk21 Congress, we can explain more about how what happens inside this community. But this is how we get to launch this section in the app, this community, this Inclusify project, and we hope that month by month we will have more interaction and more participation and co-creation inside. And thank you so much for your time, and sorry again for the technical issues before.
Now, Maria, I think we've switched so that you can hear us. We can't hear you for a second. So thank you very much. That was very well worth waiting for. I'm glad that we did. And the technology issues were on our side. So thank you for your patience. So any questions from the floor, and I'll relate them back to Maria, who, in case she can't hear. So any questions for Maria?
Well, comment. I'm in the commission on mobility and transport for the AMP, and therefore in many contact with what they are doing. I've not got all the details for this work until now, But I think maybe Maria could say something about that. That, let's say, the way from what A and B are thinking of doing to real action in municipalities, because it covers many municipalities and has been, at least with A and B and the Barcelona transport system, has been difficult during many years, and also part of the other municipalities. So let's say the chain of the findings of this study to be real, that may be a problem.
Okay, so your question is, I didn't get what your...
Let's see, the relation between A and B and their findings and their policy. How really can they influence the municipalities to participate in making better the conditions for the women? My wife is very, very angry about how it's functioning, but that's another thing.
Okay, all right, okay.
Okay, again, question. Well, it depends, of course, on on which concerns we are talking about. Because if we are talking about that the urban space is not proper for waiting a bus, for example, this is something that is competence for the city council. But one of the expectations of AMB is to collect all this data, and because we are in daily talks with public transport operations and with all city councils in our territory, in order to engage them to do these actions. So this is when the concern is more related to urban space. But when we are talking about the functioning of buses or the design of the bus itself, the interior of the bus, this is something that competes directly to AMB, as we are contracting all these bus services. The same with public bicycle shared system and other mobility services that we are providing in the metropolitan territory. So the idea is to collect this data and to achieve that these concerns could be transformed to an action plan, that we are also working on it in the mobility and transport services in the Barcelona metropolitan area, to improve all these concerns that are communicated by women.
Okay, thank you, Maria. I'm glad that the room mic seems to be good. So that's quite a sensitive issue, and thanks for your reply on that. Any other questions? Hi.
Hi, just want to know, how do you reach out to underrepresented women's groups, immigrants, minorities, people who speak Spanish? Is there a way for you to reach out to them and get their input?
Okay, yeah, well, the app to underrepresented and marginalized women's groups, maybe non-native Spanish speakers, for example.
Yeah, the app is oriented to daily, well, also for tourists could be, but it's more for daily travelers within the Barcelona metropolitan area. But is in 3 languages: is in Catalan, Spanish, and English, and also this community. So I think that all people that speaks this one or more than one of these 3 languages could be integrated in this app.
And part of the question was underrepresented or marginalized groups as well.
You mean groups that don't have access to this technology?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that's a gap that has this project, because it's a really technological project. That's why the survey, we are going to do it firstly, inside the buses, we are with people going inside the bus to do the service. This will be next week and the following week. And then we will publish the survey within the app. But the idea is to engage more women to use the app. But of course, as all technological projects, we are working only with people that are being a user of this technology. Apart from the app, as I said before, this is a web app, so this is also a web, and this web could be used without having this app, and we will publish it also in our website. But for sure, is a technological project. So if we want to work with women or with other people that don't have access to these tools, we have to organize other kind of events that could be related or not to this project. But for sure, there are so many ways to engage people for improving this kind of things.
Right, Maria, thank you very much for staying on, and it came across very well and was embellished by Jim's brilliant improvisation. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
It was great to hear your presentation. So I'd like to give people a chance for lunch. People want to get away. I'm sure you want to get away yourself. So I'd like to thank our speakers, Maria and Tally online, Wynne, Martin and Helga here in person, all the contributors from the floor, Jim for his improvisation. Thanks, Jim. I've seen him do that, given brilliant talks without notes twice already in this conference. Thanks to our room assistants as well. You were doing quite a bit of improvisation as well. So I think everything worked well in the end. Thanks very much, everybody.